All right. Wow. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers, take care of the Patriots. That was a strong arming win. And, here's something that 49ers fans who are freaking out about all these injuries, which, by the way, you probably should have expected that there'd be a lot of wear and tear given the fact they've played 60 games over the past 3 years. It's going to be about the depth for the 49ers to survive through the regular season. But anyway, if you're all doom and gloom right now, keep in mind that same Jets team that just strong-armed New England, the 49ers strong-armed them. The 49ers strong-armed the Jets. Anytime you can strong-arm a team that can strong-arm somebody else in the NFL, that's a good sign, regardless of whether it was week 1, week 2. Now we're moving on to week 3, 49ers and the Rams. But as we talked about entering the season opener, the New York Jets, with a competent quarterback, are players in the NFL. All of a sudden, you've got to take them seriously. Nobody took the Jets seriously last year after Aaron Rodgers got hurt. But it is now final 24-3 from New Jersey. And it was a 27-35, 281-yard performance for Aaron Rodgers. 8 yards an attempt. Fun to watch. I mean, he makes it look easy. And the same thing with Brock Purdy when the 49ers offense is clicking. It looks easy. Kudos to Kirk Herbstreit for crediting both Aaron Rodgers and Breece Hall and all the Jets receivers for yards after the catch today. Well, way too often you have these ridiculous debates online about whether or not a quarterback earned his yardage, because a lot of it was after the catch. It takes an accurate pass to set up Aiyuk, and then it takes a good effort on the back end after the catch. And Kirk Herbstreit had a good comment today emphasizing that it was both for the Jets. When both happen, when the quarterback is making the right pre-snap reads, pre-snap decisions, when the quarterback is using his eyes to manipulate the defense, oftentimes you could watch on TV and success looks easy. And that's what happened for the Jets today against the Patriots. So the 49ers' next opponent after the Rams, and we're going to preview Brock Purdy and that side of the football, the offense for the 49ers against the Rams on this show tonight. But the 49ers' next opponent after this will be the New England Patriots. And that's going to be back at Levi Stadium. New England beat the Cincinnati Bengals to open the season. But it just doesn't seem that the Patriots are dynamic enough to challenge a team that puts up 17 or more points. Jacoby Brissett managed 98 passing yards today. 98. They have Antonio Gibson running the football. I mean, he was a more exciting player 5 years ago for Washington. Austin Hooper is playing for the Patriots now, old Stanford guy from the East Bay. I mean, it's a tough situation for the Patriots. I get it that they were able to stymie Joe Burrow and the Bengals, and we may have a few more of those unpredictable results here early in the season because offenses are clearly behind defenses because of the lack of work that's happening in the offseason. But it does appear that the Patriots were able to catch Cincinnati week 1 at just opportune time. Bengals playing better. They are 0-2. They did lose to the Chiefs, but today we saw the Jets just take it to New England. So the 49ers, shorthanded or not, are going to be heavy favorites against the Patriots next week. But first, they have to take care of the Rams. Just don't forget about what the 49ers did to the Jets, because we're going to be evaluating this season in its totality. There are going to be ebbs and there are going to be flows. The 49ers are going to have to weather the storm because they are a team that has mileage. Players have mileage on their bodies, but depth is going to be what can help them carry through. And they're going to have to test some of that depth in this game against the Rams. Brock Purdy. A lot of people are talking about this as an opportunity for Brock Purdy. Maybe an opportunity for those who set the goalposts incorrectly and moved them over and over with Brock Purdy, saying, oh, hey, he's got to do what he's doing when there are fewer weapons on the field, which just wasn't a legitimate football take. Football is a team sport. It always has been. Purdy should have always been evaluated within the context of his team. Of course, losing Deebo Samuel, losing Christian McCaffrey, potentially even losing George Kittle is going to hurt Brock Purdy's cause. It would have hurt Joe Montana's cause. It would have hurt Tom Brady's cause. It would have hurt any quarterback's cause. So the whole weapons argument, that's a fake argument that I'm not really going to entertain. I do know that Brock Purdy has an opportunity in front of him to show that he still is one of the most efficient quarterbacks in football, regardless of the weapons around him. And he's got to find a way to make it work with what the 49ers will be able to field on Sunday at SoFi Stadium. And if there is no Kittle, and we don't know about George Kittle yet, we know that there will be no Christian McCaffrey and no Deebo Samuel. But if there's no George Kittle on top of that, then I think naturally a whole lot more focus, even more than before, and there was a lot leaving the game against Minnesota, shines on Brandon Aiyuk. Aiyuk has not been all too productive so far this year. We remember the big drop against the Jets on the dime from Brock Purdy, and then he had 4 catches for 42 yards against the Vikings, but most of that production was extremely late in the game when it seemed that, I don't want to call it garbage time because the 49ers were still fighting, but it was more of a 2-minute drill offense, softer defense from Minnesota at that point. Kyle Shanahan today went on KMBR and defended Brandon Aiyuk, said that, yeah, he played really well. He was running great routes. I think the 49ers are incentivized right now to make sure that Brandon Ayuk's confidence does not fall into the gutter. So I would take everything that Kyle Shanahan says about that situation with that in mind. It was a highly unusual offseason for Brandon Aiyuk, and it's been a rough start for him statistically. Receivers like getting the football. Receivers like producing. And when that's not happening, not necessarily good for the confidence. And the 49ers need Brandon Aiyuk to have a lot of confidence now, because at some point they may need him to take over a game when they don't have some of these other good weapons on the football team. So the reason that you stack talent offensively is so you can weather the storm of a long season where guys inevitably are going to get hurt. Star players inevitably are going to be put on the shelf from time to time. And it's very, very important that you've got enough players to make sure that you can pick up the slack when certain guys are down. 49ers will return Ricky Pearsall as soon as week 5. Christian McCaffrey probably closer to midseason. Deebo Samuel in just a couple weeks. I would think that the likeliest scenario is that Deebo Samuel misses this game against the Rams, followed by next week against the Patriots. Then the Arizona Cardinals come calling, and the Cardinals are the team that just whooped the Rams last week in Arizona, 41-10. I was looking at the box score of that game. I watched a lot of the tape this week, and it didn't seem to me that Kyler Murray threw a lot of incompletions against the Rams, and that inkling on my part was correct. Kyler Murray's stat line against LA was 17 of 21. So that's 81% completions, 12.7 per attempt, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a perfect 158.3 rating. He ran for another 59 yards. Marvin Harrison, 4 catches, 130 yards against the Rams. Trey McBride, the Cardinals tight end, 6 catches, 67 yards. James Conner, the big running back, 122 yards on nearly 6 yards per carry. The Cardinals did what they wanted against LA. And I think that the 49ers, they're shorthanded, yes, but the 49ers should have no trouble moving the ball, regardless of who they have out there in this game, as long as they've got the all-important quarterback in place. Now, of course, offense, it's a team effort. The blocking has to be good enough so that Brock Purdy can work with it. He's already shown he doesn't need it to be great. It just has to be good enough. And that becomes much easier when Aaron Donald has retired, and he has retired. Chris Foerster today, the 49ers offensive line coach, was talking about the fact that for years, the entire lead up to a Rams game, the entire week of film and practice had been obsession over Aaron Donald, over number 99, because he could destroy a game so easily. Well, Aaron Donald's no longer there. That's a big break for the 49ers. He was still a top 5 pass rusher even in his last season in the NFL. Kobe Turner, younger defensive tackle, has taken Aaron Donald's spot. He's not somebody that you have to game plan around, but he did have a sack last week against Arizona. So that's obviously somebody that the 49ers, number 91, are going to call out in this game. Chris Firster talked about 91 replacing 99 at that defensive tackle spot. You're not going to see Kobe Turner do what Aaron Donald did, and that's move around the line. Some of the great defensive tackles in the game do that quite frequently. We saw Quinnen Williams, one of the great defensive tackles in the game, line up against Colton McKivitz, so line up as a defensive end early in that week 1 game against the 49ers. We would frequently see Aaron Donald lined up against both left tackle and right tackle as a defensive end against San Francisco. I don't think that Kobe Turner is going to have that kind of expandability. Hell, we've even seen Chris Jones do it against the 49ers over a couple Super Bowls and then in that regular season game in the 2022 season. So anyway, keep your eye on Kobe Turner at that defensive tackle spot. He is the replacement for Aaron Donald. The Rams traded away Ernest Jones the fourth, which continued their rather puzzling lack of emphasis on the linebacker position. The Rams have not prioritized linebacker ever since Sean McVay took over the same year as Kyle Shanahan took over the 49ers in 2017. It's funny to me because I think that's why San Francisco has seen so much consistent success against the Rams. The only time that LA has managed to beat the 49ers outside of a throwaway game in week 18 since the 49ers got good, right? Since 2019 has been that NFC Championship game when the 49ers were absolutely depleted injury-wise. Trent Williams was playing on a high ankle sprain, and Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers quarterback, was playing with 2 injuries in that game. So, I mean, the data is the data. The 49ers have had the Rams' number. Shanahan has had McVay's number ever since he got his roster up to par in that 2019 season. And I think one of the reasons that's been the case is the 49ers' adaptability offensively, the positionless skill positions that we talk about, the fact that guys can, it's an amorphous offense. Guys can line up at multiple different spots. It's been a terrible matchup for the Rams linebackers. So that's just that. No Ernest Jones anymore for the Rams. Jared Verse, he's a rookie out of Florida State playing outside linebacker. They've got the 2 edge, they're 3-4. The 2 edge rushing outside linebackers are from the ACC and the SEC. First, Jared Verse was teammates with Ronaldo Green and Tatum Bethune, the 49ers, 2 rookies on the defense. So this is going to be the Florida State Bowl in a way in this game. Also have Braden Fisk out of Florida State. But there's the 2 inside linebackers, Troy Reeder and Christian Roseboom, who are both players who I think that the 49ers can get after on that second level. By the way, I mentioned the SEC. That's Byron Young, the other outside linebacker out of Tennessee, who I believe might have notched a sack against the 49ers last year, but it didn't matter because if it was in the first game, the 49ers won. The second game, obviously, they lost, but that game didn't matter. That was with the backups there after San Francisco had locked up the 1 seed. But Byron Young, anyway, he out of Tennessee, he's one of the edge rushers for the Rams. Other side is a rookie, Jared Verse. 3 rookies starting for this defense between Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, and Cameron Kinchens, who is the free safety for the Rams. So a lot of new faces. Jalen Ramsey hasn't been with this team in a while. They still do have Tre'Davious White at that cornerback position. I'm sure you've heard of the 29-year-old cornerback, formerly of the Buffalo Bills. He probably is the veteran on that defense. When you look up and down, Cameron Curl's been around the league for a while, former Washington Commander at strong safety. But Tre'Davious White, Cameron Curl in that secondary for the Rams. And then the first layer of depth of that defensive backfield for the Rams is all rookies between Josh Wallace, Jalen McCullough, Cam Lampkin, and Charles Woods. All rookies can potentially enter the game if there's an injury behind one of the starting DBs. And one of the starting DBs in Cameron Kinchens is already a rookie. So the task is simple for the 49ers. This is a scheme game. This is going to be a heavy run game to set up the pass. I mean, but when you see a Rams defense that's so relatively inexperienced, that was terrible last week, that let Kyler Murray do what he wanted, you would think that the 49ers will be able to get the Rams in compromised positions just with the way that they run their offense. And if it's good execution from the 49ers, which Brock Purdy has the ability to do, they should roll in this game. They should be able to move the football in this game. And that is even without some of their star weapons. Sean McVay did talk about the 49ers offense without Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. Let's have a listen to the Rams coach.
Great players, that are, tremendous assets for them. Kyle does a great job of being able to utilize the versatile skill sets that both of them have and the multitude of issues that they can present to put pressure on a defense. But they've got a lot of other guys that they do a great job doing that with as well. You look at the way that their backs have stepped in and done an outstanding job of really continuing to, produce at a really high level in the first two games. Kyle's always heavily leaned on, the run game and does a great job of being able to mix it up. You still have a movable piece in Juszczyk. Kittle and Aiyuk are nightmares, and I think Juwan Jennings is a very underrated player. You've seen Saubert make some plays, and then obviously their offensive line, Chris Furster does as good a job as anybody of getting those guys ready to roll. And so it's a challenge. It's really a challenge with those two guys out. Hopefully they'll be okay, but I'm not sad that they're not playing against us. But they are still as good as it gets offensively in this league.
49ers are as good as it gets offensive in this league, according to Sean McVay. And I think that's the type of respect that the number one offense from a season ago deserves. Again, we just saw the Jets defense, which we knew was really good from last year, completely suffocate New England. 49ers put up 32 points seemingly in their sleep against the Jets in week one. And they weren't clicking by any stretch of the imagination. San Francisco wasn't. As far as the pass game went, we saw Brandon Aiyuk drop that pass in the end zone. I just think that there were a lot of field goals in that game for the 49ers, so they weren't firing on full cylinders in the red zone. They obviously haven't had Christian McCaffrey through the first 2 weeks, but they were able to just run it down New York's throat that first week. They also ran the ball fairly successfully against Minnesota, something we could talk about in a little bit. But the point is that they have the firepower, even without some of their star weapons, to put together a potent offensive performance. And that's exactly what Sean McVay acknowledged there. Speaking of Minnesota, I mean, they were running some high-level stuff scheme-wise. It's generated a lot of interest from some of the analysts of the game. Chase Daniel, the former quarterback today, was talking about some of the amorphous looks that the Vikings were giving the 49ers early that definitely created a lot of confusion. I mean, Harrison Smith, the safety, crashed down on the very first play of the game, and then he sprinted about 25 yards back to create a too-high safety look, despite the fact that the Vikings were showing heavy pressure early on. That's the kind of stuff that Minnesota might be doing better than anybody in the league. Created some confusion with the 49ers, and it definitely made Brock Purdy think twice. I think Purdy still generally handled things well in that game. He checked down the Kyle Juszczyk on that very first play when he was like, what the hell is Harrison Smith doing sprinting backwards? But to me, it's going to be very fascinating to see the 49ers move to face another defense following that game against an amorphous Minnesota front with a lot of adaptable weapons that were able to take the 49ers out of their comfort zone. As an example, San Francisco ran play action only 7% of the time last week. This is a team that ran play action 25% of the time last year. They only ran it 9% of the time against the Vikings last year, though. So Brian Flores and the Vikings took the 49ers out of their comfort zone. It's time for San Francisco to return to it. And I don't think that the Rams have the personnel like Andrew Van Ginkel, who could play all over the place. I mean, Andrew Van Ginkel's like an outside linebacker that comes in who could rush off the edge, had a top two uh, pass rush pressure win rate last year in pass obvious situations, second only to Nick Bosa, but he's also getting his hands on passes, short passes, just a really cerebral and explosive player. I don't see anybody like that on the Rams defensive roster. There are no true game wreckers for the Rams anymore now that Aaron Donald has retired. The linebackers aren't great for the Rams. They've got a guy like Tre'Davious White at age 29 at the cornerback position, but this still, by and large, looks like a really, really good opportunity for the 49ers to be able to move the football. Now, it is still early in the season, and we've seen these offenses sputter. Brandon Aiyuk has sputtered so far this year. It makes sense. He didn't participate in camp. So you look around the league, abbreviated training camp, teams not really firing on all full cylinders early because of that. It makes a lot of sense that the player who missed training camp for the 49ers, alongside Trent Williams, another player who missed training camp, haven't yet been playing their best football. But the 49ers do need them to start picking up some of that slack. We talked to Chris Furster today, and I wanted to show you guys the 49ers offensive side of the ball here. I've highlighted some of the injuries. Christian McCaffrey obviously is on injured reserve, so he's not on the depth chart anymore. But Furster was talking about the need for the 49ers offensive line to play better together as a unit. We saw some issues in the silent count on the road in Minnesota last week. The crowd should be more 49ers favorable this time, so that should help San Francisco. But Furster was talking about the fact that everything is tied together. And that's why I got the big picture written down at the bottom on the text title. It's not, and this is something that I try to hammer home every single week. It's not just about these five guys blocking for Brock Purdy. It's about the decisions that Brock Purdy makes, but it's also about the separation that this group right here gets and how that separation cohesively works with Brock Purdy's decision making. Because if Purdy is supposed to throw on the second hitch to Juwan Jennings, but doesn't get the ball off and instead has to step up in the pocket past the second hitch, and then he's looking for somebody like Chris Conley, well, then all of a sudden, somebody like Jake Brendel or Aaron Banks, who was holding a good block up until the second hitch, all of a sudden the defensive lineman might start beating him, and that's when a sack happens. Brock Purdy got sacked 6 times last week. So all of a sudden, an offensive lineman who wouldn't have been noticed gets noticed in a bad way because there isn't separation or the play call wasn't right. Whatever was happening on the receiving end of the pass game negatively impacted how the blocking was perceived. So that's why an offense has to fire on all cylinders or else things will look ugly. When an offense is firing on all cylinders, and we've seen that so many times from the 49ers over the course of the past couple seasons with Brock Purdy, stuff can look easy. Stuff can look a little bit like it did for the Jets tonight against the New England Patriots. So I expect this to continue to be a work in progress for the 49ers. We've recognized that Aiyuk missed training camp. We've recognized that Trent Williams missed training camp. We recognize that Deebo Samuel is now out of this game. We also recognize that there's a chance that George Kittle doesn't play. So this is not 100% capacity for the 49ers by any stretch. But what they have to do is continue to focus on operating the system and refining the system as interchangeably as possible on a week by week basis, because you never know which player is going to miss which week. Christian McCaffrey can be back by week 7, week 8, but then Brandon Aiyuk might miss week 10. So it's like a game of whack-a-mole if you're just focused on one player at a time. If you focus on the system as a whole, having guys in that next man up mentality fill in the role of the man ahead of them, then you turn into a team that can smoothly sail through the turbulent waters of a longer NFL season. And that's what the 49ers have to start showing. And I think it's a good proving grounds for them against the Rams, because the Rams have not been good defensively. They just got completely obliterated by the Arizona Cardinals last week. All right, time to answer some questions here on the show. It's 49ers Q&A time on Thursday night. How's everybody doing? I'm thirsty. Scott thinks the 49ers are going to go 4-0 over the next month. Well, They've got the Rams. That could be a win. They're favored. They've got the Patriots. That should be a win. They'll be favored. Then the Cardinals. They'll be favored, but the Cardinals are playing ball. The Cardinals are 2-0. They hung in there with the Bills as well on the road in week 1. So I wouldn't sleep on the Cardinals. And then it's the Seahawks. Then it's Seattle on Thursday night. That's a short week right after Arizona. So, and then it gets real, right? Then isn't it Kansas City and Dallas after that? So, oh boy, the season intensifies quick. It's important to stack wins early. 49ers ran into a roadblock in Minnesota, but they can get right back on the horse this Sunday against the Rams. Now, the Seahawks, they struggled to beat the Patriots in week 2. That took overtime for Seattle. Yeah, the Cardinals are 1-1. Sorry. Did I say 2-0 for Arizona? I think they lost to the Bills. They gave the Bills maybe not everything they could handle, but a lot that they barely handled in week 1. But yeah, Arizona's dangerous. It seems that Kyler Murray is playing some of the best football of his career. I would say the best football of his career based on the numbers from the first 2 games. And the 49ers, like everybody, still finding themselves as a team. Offense is so down across the entire league. It's fascinating to me, but it is a reflection of the lack of practice that this is now the preseason. September is now preseason football. So you have to be ready for unpredictable stuff to happen early in the season. Do I think that Kyle Shanahan trusts Isaac Guerendo enough for him to be a factor? Well, Guerendo's early in his career. He's still learning how to run the outside zone in a Kyle Shanahan, Bobby Turner scheme. So I think if they have to go to Guerendo because they have injury issues up top with Jordan Mason, then we'll find that out in real time. But as long as Jordan Mason is healthy and running the way that he is right now, it's going to be hard for Isaac Guerendo to get the kind of carries to learn in real time and prove himself. He's going to have to wait on that bench, and his time will come, and it might not come until next season as far as a bigger load of carries goes. But I mean, we're talking about the frontliners for the 49ers right now. They've got intriguing depth. Guerendo, an intriguing special teams player for now. Still a work in progress when it comes to that running back position. I am looking for good questions. A Ronnie Bell sighting on Sunday? Well, I mean, potentially. I mean, San Francisco doesn't have what? Top of the receiving room, Deebo Samuel. That could be enough to slide somebody up in the pecking order at receiver. Obviously, no Ricky Pearsall. I treat Christian McCaffrey, and I talk of him as a receiver. Ronnie Bell is depth on this team. If the 49ers have to get down to that level, that means that they've had a lot of guys become unavailable. Obviously, things are trending a little bit further in that direction than the 49ers would like. No, the wide receiver the 49ers signed, I think you're talking about Terrace Marshall. I do not expect him playing for the 49ers. He's a practice squad guy for San Francisco. If they call somebody up, it might be Trent Taylor just to offer some insulation at punt returner, but I would still expect Jacob Cowing to be the punt returner for the 49ers, even after the muff in Minnesota. So Cowing, that's another rookie that you can wonder, does he get some gadget action offensively in this game for the 49ers? Now that they are a little bit shorthanded offensively, he's really quick, great burst off the line of scrimmage, could be a good end around guy, could see some of the same roles that Ray McLeod saw in this offense for the 49ers. There's nothing wrong with Trent Taylor returning punts. He did not drop a single one of them over his first tenure with the 49ers. I think, as you probably should know by now, based on what happened in the Super Bowl, or we can even rewind past a decade to the Kyle Williams game, a whole lot more can go wrong on punt returns than can go right on punt returns. So floor is important at that position. Kenny's got a good point here. Kyler used his legs a lot against the Rams. We could expect Purdy to do the same. If he needs to go out of structure, then Purdy can. Kyler Murray, obviously, that's part of his game. And it's part of Purdy's too. I don't think it's at the top of Purdy's game. I think running is an escape plan for Brock Purdy. Does he need to use it this week? We'll see. It's Terrace Marshall, not Terrence Marshall. But yeah, he was a good player in college. I get it. And I think the 49ers saw potential, and they're working on getting him up to speed. That's why they brought Terrace Marshall into the practice squad. That doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be the first guy off the bench to start playing when receivers ahead of him get hurt. Scott says Cowan can open up the mid-range throws Brock thrives on by taking the top off the defense. It's, easier said than done. Let's put it that way. Because to be a functional part of the offense, you've got to block. You've got to be able to run the whole route tree. You have to know how to line up at multiple different positions. It's not so easy for a rookie to just show up and deliver. You don't just line a guy up and tell him to run a streak pattern to clear out space for everyone else. The offense is a little bit more complex than that. I would think that Jacob Cowing's contribution early on will probably come more through some gadget plays. Again, I see him as more of a Ray McCloud replacement for the 49ers than a straight burner trying to take off the top of the defense. He's got a really quick burst off the line. He's got good straight line speed, don't get me wrong, but it's mainly his first few steps. Jacob Cowing ran the fastest first 5 yards, like the highest miles per hour in the first 5 yards out of any receiver in the 2024 NFL Scouting Combine. That's what really illustrates his strength. And I think because of that, some of the short area gadget kind of stuff can really, really come in useful for the 49ers. Do I see the 49ers picking up another running back soon? Well, here's the room right now. Mason, Garendo, Taylor, Keyshawn Vaughn on the practice squad. I don't think it's necessarily a pressing need at the very moment. I would like to know a little bit more about where Isaac Garendo exactly is. I think a lot of that would influence the 49ers decision in the running back room. I do know that Patrick Taylor Jr. is a good pass protector, gives the 49ers a bit of a higher floor in that regard. How much of the offense can the 49ers run without Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey? Well, all of it. There's a reason you got depth on the team. Now, McCaffrey, that's the one exception, and I've talked about this before. They do some fancy stuff on top of everything that only Christian McCaffrey can do as a receiver. But otherwise, you could run the whole offense. Will it be as lethal? Will it be as efficient? No. But the reason that you got depth and the reason that you ran through training camp and you try to sign specifically tailored players for different positions is so you could keep the line moving even when some guys are out. So the 49ers are going to continue to run their offense. They just may not be able to have some of the very, very elite bells and whistles that somebody like Christian McCaffrey brings the team when he's out there. Mike adds, it seems like the passing offense I'm guessing you're trying to say without a pass catching back is entirely gone. Yeah, but that's not an issue for the 49ers now. They've got Jordan Mason. He worked on the jugs machine. They've continued running a lot of the same structure, even without Christian McCaffrey, with Jordan Mason back there. And you know what? Once it turns to Isaac Guerendo was a receiver first in college before he turned to running back. So he should be able to give the 49ers some solid reps catching the ball out of the backfield. What's the status with Feliciano? He's on injured reserve. No update to this point. He had knee surgery. I wouldn't expect him to walk through that door at any point soon. Although he is the other player on this roster with starting center experience for the Giants a couple years ago. Charles says the 49ers defense can have a serious coming out party this Sunday. Well, yeah, especially considering the fact that the Rams are dealing with one of the worst offensive lines that we've ever seen so far this year. I talked about it in the other half of the preview. This is the roster. I need to put this up on the screen for you guys. Is that up there now? No, it's not. Here we go. There it is. Look at that. Rams pass protection. Do you see the LA logo way over here? That's not good. That's what LA is dealing with. Everybody is over here. The Rams are here. 49ers are going to try to rupture that offensive line and obviously grab some sacks in this game. Guys, John Feliciano cannot play center when he's on injured reserve. We do not know when Feliciano is going to be back yet. That's not something that you should be counting on to happen anytime soon. He had knee surgery. It's going to take a while. I think they do hope he comes back this year, but there's a long road ahead before that's a thing. First and foremost, the 49ers just have to play better cohesively as a unit. Guys like Brandell are going to look better if they play cohesively as a unit. Guys like Aiyuk would look better. Now, of course, all of those individual players have different improvements that they themselves have to make, but stuff is never as bad as it seems or as good as it seems. Football is a complicated team sport. Everybody is pulling toward the same goal, or at least you'd hope they're pulling toward the same goal. And the 49ers are still trying to knock out some cobwebs offensively. It is only week 2. We're live. Eric Gomes has entered the chat later than he normally is, but he's here. So hello to Eric Gomes. The 49ers will not start Zakel or to have Zakel take snaps at center just because the Rams may be weaker along the defensive line. NFL doesn't work that way. The 49ers are going to go with their guys. Chris Furster just explained why Jake Brendell's the best center on the 49ers team today that's available right now. Maybe Feliciano's better, but obviously Brendell won the competition, has the leg up against anybody else. He was a Pro Bowl honorable mention last year. So we don't need to continue the talk of the 49ers are going to make a change along the offensive line imminently right now just because they had one bad game against Minnesota. A lot of guys had a bad game against Minnesota. The team just didn't play cohesively against Minnesota. The solution is not throwing Nick Zakel in there for a couple series against the Rams. It's just never how things work. You know, I don't know about a realistic timeline for Greenlaw's return. I think with an Achilles happening in February, you're looking at later in the season for Dre Greenlaw the soonest. And, you know, I don't think Devondre Campbell's been terrible. I don't think he's been great. I think he's been middle of the pack linebacker. 49ers can count on him to keep it steady at that linebacker position. And then maybe, just maybe, they get a later season boost from Dre Greenlaw. Mike says go as possible, slow as possible with Greenlaw. think that's what I think you go at the right speed. You don't rush him, right? So you don't slow things down intentionally, but you take your time. And I think signing Devondre Campbell gives the 49ers that ability. They use Juszczyk more as a pass catcher with Kittle possibly out. They've been using Juszczyk a lot as a pass catcher already. I think, again, it's a totality issue. You look at the overall efficiency of the offense, you see where a guy may need to fit in. Yeah, maybe if George Kittle's unavailable, you do need a little bit more out of the fullback position, catching the football. But let's just wait till Sunday. Not really worth speculating until we know the actual injury report. 49ers still have a big leg up against the Rams. That's the gist of this preview. Brock Purdy in the offense against a Rams defense no longer featuring the future Hall of Famer, Aaron Donald. Everybody, thanks for watching. We will talk to you tomorrow.